Hello and welcome to the Fawley site on behalf of ExxonMobil and our contractor companies. You'll remember from your site induction that there are many key rules and pieces of information that you need to know to work safely on the site at Fawley. For example, the Fawley life-saving rules, the wearing of the correct PPE for each area of the site, general evacuation and emergency procedures, and the LPS system of behavioural safety that all site personnel use to keep them safe. The site at Fawley comprises a refinery and chemical complex which together produce a vast range of lubricants, fuels and also specialty chemical products like rubber and solvents. In order to produce these range of diverse products, the site uses many different feedstocks and processes. This means that there are many different process areas, or units, that are manufacturing products at the site. Each process unit has its own hazards, and although they are safely operated and the Fawley site has very few incidents, it's important that you know the hazards on each unit that you work on, in order that you carry out your work safely and in the unlikely event of an emergency. For example, likely hazards can include toxic or flammable fluids, high pressure systems, hot or very cold surfaces, corrosive acids or alkalis, working in an area that involves upgrading of PPE, such as double hearing protection or even wearing a life jacket when working over water. You can see that to have one induction to cover all the areas would be too long and detailed to understand. We've therefore developed specific shorter induction films for each of the units that you would be expected to work on. These inductions are very important as they contain information specific to the area that you'll be working in, including the hazards and also emergency procedures and evacuation routes that you'll require in the event of an emergency. As you did with the site induction, please give this short film your best attention, and please ask either your supervisor or ExxonMobil contact if you require any more assistance or clarification. Everybody working on units must have both a site induction and a block-specific induction. We need to ensure that everybody working at Fawley has the right information to ensure that nobody gets hurt. Welcome to the CAT complex at Fawley Refinery. The CAT, or catalytic cracking unit, comprises three separate units: the CAT cracker, the resid finer, sulfur units and sour water strippers. The function of each of these different units and the processes used are all different despite them being part of the CAT complex. The hazards will therefore be different as you work on them. It is important that you are aware of the hazards of where you're working and understand the emergency procedures and facilities around you. It is the expectation of the CAT plant team that at all times you carry your site induction book, or white book as it's known, in order to familiarise yourself with the hazards of where you're working on a daily basis and the emergency facilities you may need in the event of an incident. Before working or visiting the CAT complex, you must contact the area operator via radio or telephone provided for permission to enter the working unit. CAT plant communications are via Channel 1, and a radio is located adjacent to the permit hut for your use. Sign in to the relevant area that you're working, being as specific as possible to your location. This applies if you're working all day or briefly dropping off materials onto the plant. When leaving the block at any time, please sign out of the area. You must get permission to bring vehicles or other plant onto the process unit. It's important we minimise the number of vehicles on the unit as they can be a potential source of ignition, and incidents have occurred where equipment has been damaged. This applies even if you have a red all areas pass. You must still notify process. To reiterate, it's important that you give us as much information as possible about where you are working because in the event of an emergency, we may need to search for you. If the plant gas alarm does sound, move across wind to the nearest muster point and await instructions. However, be aware that in an alarm condition, the nearest muster point is not necessarily the safest. Also remember to consider that walking is working. On the CAT complex, we have many different surfaces, from paving to gravel and uneven ground. When you walk around, choose the safest route and don't rush. We'll now show you some of the specific hazards associated with the CAT plant, resid finer, sulfur and SWS units. The CAT plant on Block 8 has a high concentration of hydrogen sulfide, H2S. This is up to 850,000 parts per million, and that this concentration is fatal if inhaled. It is heavier than air, very poisonous, corrosive, flammable and explosive. The human nose is very sensitive to its characteristic foul odour of rotten eggs. Your personal monitor alarms at just 10 parts per million to warn you. Please take note of where there are blue H2S lines adjacent to you, and always consider your escape route when working. The cat plant also contains corrosive products such as MEA, caustic and Merox. Don't forget, areas where corrosive chemicals are present are surrounded by a red line, where you must upgrade to goggles and rubber gauntlets when inside or adjacent to the red line area. There are many very hot surfaces, with some process streams reaching temperatures up to 750 degrees Celsius. It's essential that you consider this when working next to pipework and vessels. All of our plants are of an age where they can contain asbestos in insulation or gaskets, the presence of which may be determined from red lines painted onto pipework. If you think you may have found or disturbed asbestos, stop work and report it straight away to process. Also, the cat plant process utilises a fine catalyst. This can accumulate in some areas of the plant. You'll need to upgrade your PPE accordingly if catalyst dust is present, especially in windy conditions. The cat cracker structure is elevated, and your utmost care and mitigation should be in place when working aloft. Remember that all tools should be tied off, materials stored safely, and all areas below overhead work must be barriered off. Your dropped object could cause someone serious injury. When accessing the structure, a lift can be used. However, never use this in an emergency situation. The cat structure has 9 levels. Please contact CCR Cat Channel 1 or 36532 before entering the 9th floor. This is due to safety valves that release to the atmosphere. The cat plant gas alarm is a 2-tone klaxon, and it's tested on Thursdays between 1600 and 1630. The resid finer on Block 7A is also an area of very high H2S content. It also has a very high pressure system process over 2000 psi. Like in all areas of the refinery, consider where you are working and the effect that your work can have on it. Consider how your work can affect process equipment and ensure you have the exact work scope written on your permit. The resid finer plant gas alarm is an intermittent horn and is tested on Thursdays at 1630. The sulphur units and sour water strippers on Block 11B again has areas of high H2S and also other hazards such as molten sulphur products. There are areas on this unit where double hearing protection is mandatory. Exposure to high levels of noise without the correct level of ear defenders can cause permanent hearing damage. Signs will advise you of necessary hearing upgrades. The 11B gas alarm is a 2-tone warble and is common to both 11B and 11A, the poly plant owned by ExxonMobil Chemicals, and is tested between 1600 and 1630 on Thursdays. Remember, all the details for the units are contained inside your white induction book. The information provided is critical to you and your colleagues' safety. Have the right information at the right time, rather than having no information at the wrong time. Also, when you're working on our units, please at all times always use good housekeeping philosophy, use waste bins and skips provided. Never deviate from your permit conditions without getting the permit reauthorized. Don't forget, a permit to work is required for any activity and should be read and understood by all involved, as it will contain additional safety information relevant to that task at that time. Also remember, our units are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please do not block access or egress to any equipment or roadway. We would also ask that if you see an unsafe act or process situation, please report it immediately so that it can be investigated at the earliest opportunity. Pet phones are located across the blocks. Dial 9 in an emergency. Even if it's a false alarm or condition, We'd rather investigate the potential situation than not know. Your observation could be critical. Please remember, our goal is always nobody gets hurt. We mean it, and with your safe work on our unit, together we can achieve this. Finally, if there's anything in this presentation that you aren't clear of, please talk to your supervisor or a member of the process team. Thank you for listening and have a safe day.